Welcome back to Talk Football Live. We're going to be looking at the round of 16 games this weekend. We're focusing on the Arsenal Villa game. Villa is at home actually, so Arsenal is visiting, and we'll also be talking about the Newcastle Spurs game. Both of those teams played, all four teams played midweek. We had a huge set of games midweek this week. I think everybody enjoyed that. Work maybe didn't get so much attention during those periods for us. But we're here. We're here. We're back. We're excited. Please like, share, subscribe. Continue to tune in and follow us. And yeah, we're starting with the Arsenal Villa game. So we're joined with Yoni today and Biodun and Charles. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well, doing very well. By the way, I think you
Good.
said round of 16, and now I think you are eager to get into the Champions League mode. So we are not there yet.
Yeah.
This is
So when
still
I
the
when I
EPL.
said that it's match week 16, but yeah, I
Match week.
have a dual focus for a change this season. So
Yeah, Charles can relate. He's that
that's
point
playing
to
on my
relate with the
mind.
round of 16. That's why I caught it actually. So
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Ah,
Excitement.
see, Charles, I don't want to get into you, but it's looking like you won't be in Europe back-to-back season. Do you agree with me?
I mean, you were in Europe for 7 years, so
the funny thing is when we talk about
what's
that, I don't
your
think
point?
Charles. I keep telling the Chelsea fans. I remember back in around I think 2019 when I had the same kind of delusion they had about where they are right now. Because I remember at the end of this season, like 2018, I'm like, yeah, just don't worry, we're coming back next season. We're coming back. Just wait for next season. And then next season starts, and you're like, oh damn. So I think they're still in that phase where they're like they don't realize how bad things are at the moment. So let's just leave Charles be.
Let's leave Chelsea
All right.
alone. Let's leave Chelsea alone.
So
You never know. Miracles happen.
Villa secured a huge result in midweek. I think this is the first time we've seen Pep Guardiola draw 3 games, first of all, back to back, and follow that up with a defeat. I don't think we've ever heard of such a sequence of results with Pep Guardiola under any team he's managed. So this is new territory for City. But even more impressive was what Villa did in that game, right? And I think we were all impressed as Arsenal fans. We were, happy to see that result. But let's delve into what we're likely to see. We've talked a lot about how Emery sets up. Emery is doing a fantastic job at the moment. We have to give him a lot of credit because if you think about where Villa was when he took over from Gerrard, they were just above relegation places. And within about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, he's taken them to a point where we can just about say they're in, a fight for the title this season because they're 4 points off the top. We're almost halfway through the season, funny as that sounds. And they're up there. I think Villa is second when you look at the calendar year for 2023. They're second at the moment in terms of points in this calendar year. So they're one of the best teams in the league, undoubtedly. Yoni, what do you think we're likely to see from Emery setup, and how do you think Arsenal might look to counter what Villa is doing at the moment?
Yeah. So looking back to that game against City, right? If if you for a minute forget the name City and actually look at the individual players that Pep lined up in midfield in particular, you had Akanji, Stones, Enrico Lewis as a midfield three. If the name of the team was not City, that is not a midfield that belongs in any top team, right? So to begin with, he didn't have the right players. I think he got his tactics wrong. Now, and I say that because Villa, if you've noticed, Ayos, I know you like to watch these games from a tactical point of view usually. And so every time you've watched Villa, whether they're playing at home or away, they always, especially at home, they play with a very high line. They press really high. And the teams that they struggle with are teams that can hit them with ball over behind defense, right? Which you need proper wingers, not midfielders that have been shoehorned into wingers, but actual wingers. What Pep did was he had 2 center backs and a Rico Lewis at 10, all 3 of them that just were out of position. Rico Lewis doesn't play 10. Akanji, definitely not a midfielder. Stones plays midfield sometimes, but usually when he is paired with Rodri. Right now, you've paired 2 center backs in the midfield. And on top of that, on the wing, he had Foden and
Bernardo Silva.
Bernardo Silva. They just didn't have any threat behind the lines that would push back against Villa. So, and that's why you saw the likes of, for example, Bailey just having a lot of 1v1 against Vardio, because he had nothing to worry about behind him that he needed to defend, right? And then if you notice on the other side, McGinn, who is really a midfielder, was playing as a winger in this game. But because he's a midfielder, he constantly kept drifting into midfield, allowing Digne to overlap and go basically operate as a winger. Sort of like a reverse of what we do at Arsenal with Zini and Martinelli, right? Where Zini tucks in. This time, McGinn was tucking in, allowing Digne to go in. That kept Walker in check the whole game. Walker basically had no impact, especially going forward, right? So that kept him in check, allowing that team to constantly bomb on that side. They were actually leaning to the left for the most part, Villa's left, and then they kept switching the ball diagonally to Bailey, and he was having all kinds of joy. So I mention all these things for a reason, because if you look at Arsenal and the way we play, one, we're definitely going to see an actual midfielders in that midfield that can hold onto the ball and that are press resistant, right? And can pass through the press. That's one. And two, you have Martinelli and Saka on the wing that will actually threaten Villa's fullbacks. Absolutely. So if Emery tries to replicate what the kind of setup that he had against City, against Arsenal, I can definitely see us hitting them, with a couple of passes in midfield and then hitting them long towards one of our wingers and then creating havoc. Now, if he wants to actually contend or sort of push back against that, then he would have to push the line back slightly deeper and then play more for control as opposed to the aggressive approach that he took against City. We'll see. But if he approaches it that way, I think Arsenal will have joy behind that defense. That's what I expect.
So based on what you just brought up, I was just going to throw a question to Charles. So
yeah,
you only talked about wingers, right? So I think part of what was City's problem in that game was they were lacking a lot of their usual regulars. There was no Doku, no Grealish. Mahrez, as we know, is gone, and of course Rodri is out. So there were a lot of times when Villa countered, right? So City retained possession a lot, but whenever Villa tried to hit on the counter, Bailey and McGinn were able to come into the midfield. They were able to overload that midfield, and there was nobody like Rodri sitting and controlling that middle. I saw a couple of times when Akanji and I think Stones, in trying to build up the press, they lost the ball.
Yep.
So, Charles, how do you see now that Villa is going to be faced with proper wingers in Saka and maybe Martinelli or Trossard? How do you see maybe Emery setting up or changing differently, against an Arsenal setup, especially when they're going to have someone like Rice and maybe Havertz or Trossard in that middle?
Yeah. Before I even go into the Arsenal game, I just want to say something. Let it be known that last recording, Biodun was stuck on the fact that Emery has never beaten Guardiola, and it's not going to happen. And I kept telling him it's the first time.
Sure.
I'm just throwing that out there. Now, to answer your question, Ayo, honestly, just as Johnny analyzed, it was a weaker City. On paper, on field, it was a weaker City. so many men were missing. People were plugged into different positions that they weren't used to playing. So, although we didn't really expect the results to go that way, it went that way. Well, I did. But anyways, that's by the way.
Yeah.
For Arsenal, what can Aston Villa do to get a result against Arsenal? I personally think they should do what they did against City. Just play your game. Now, you come into this game though, it's going to be a little more difficult because Arsenal has the right men in the right positions. But it doesn't mean they can't counter Arsenal. Basically, it's going to be a toe-to-toe game. Whoever wants it more takes it. So you're not going to expect what City is giving to you or what City gave to you. You're going to expect Arsenal to come out fighting because they have all those men, like I said. But you should come out fighting also. Now, can it tweak anything or make some changes? Off the bat, I would say no. I would say go with the exact team when we against City and basically do what you can do. Now, focus on the game and study your men and see where your weaknesses lie or where Arsenal is being strong and then counter. But I personally, coming off a victory, coming off the high and confidence from a victory, I wouldn't change anything. I'll bring in that team because, like you mentioned, Bailey and likes of McGinn doing what they did because City was weaker in those positions. I think they can still do what they did against us now. It's just not going to be as easy. Now, of course, as the game progresses, because Arsenal has a stronger midfield with Rice and whoever is going to play along with him, he may need to make some changes in midfield, but he shouldn't do it before the game. He should start the game, watch the game, understand the game, and then make the changes needed. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's what Emery tends to do, right? What I've seen from Emery is Emery usually sets up his squad for 90 minutes. He doesn't just go, okay, I'm going to play my best formation and my best tactics. He usually tends to have a plan for like the first 30, 60 minutes, and he has a plan for the, 60 to 75th and so on. And he has, I think Arteta likes to call them impactors. I would say Emery too has maybe a similar concept where he's like, these are the two guys I'm going to bring on. And you might notice he did that against City towards the end. He brought in Ramsey and
Diaby.
I forget who.
Diaby,
right, to finish up the game. And those were in the same areas, right, where we saw that, City struggled already, against Guardiola. He brought in Diaby to keep running against Guardiola.
Mm-hmm.
So he has that kind of similar plan. So, Biodo, I'm going to give you this question, right? Where is the joy for Arsenal? So we've talked about the strength of Villa and how they use that effectively. Being able to sit up. They like to push Digne up against offense. McGinn and Bailey will come in fit typically. How does Arsenal counter against this strong Villa side? Where's the possibility for us to get a win and get some joy? Where are the weaknesses for Villa?
Yeah, so number one, I agree completely with what Yoni said. And Charles, I don't know why you're making this about me. It's fine. I made a wrong call. That's okay. But I didn't make a wrong call about Man United beating Chelsea. So let's just like that. So that's one right there. So I'll talk to you later. Back to the question. You know what's funny today? Before we came online, right? Yoni and I had a quick sync and we caught up. And before I met Yoni this afternoon, man, I'm gonna be honest. I have been wrapping my head around how can we set up? How can I get 3 points? I don't even want 1 point. I don't want a draw. In my head, I'm like, how can we get 3 points? Because the way the season is going, you need to take your chances. If you want to win this league, you have to win these tough games. So I've been thinking around how can Arsenal get a win from this game? And I was really worried because the game that I saw Villa played yesterday, I have never seen them play like that this season. As a matter of fact, Emery said that was their best game this season. And I think everyone would agree because the intensity was so high. They came out. But speaking to Yoni today, I had a good feeling. And my feeling, I thought about what he said, which he said. So I'm just going to buttress it a little bit. Doku was missing. Grealish was already suspended, right? Yeah. I think the joy for Arsenal is that, what's it called? Is on our wingers, right?
Yep.
It's wide players. I think our joy comes from our wide player to push back because I had to go back and look at some of the games that Villa played with Bailey. And I'm like, okay, how did Bailey perform better in that game more than his previous games. Bailey is just coming back, so he's eating form. So give it to him. He had a very good game. But yes, Yoni actually pointed it out to me that he does not think they will be able to do that against Arsenal, which I completely agree with. Meaning we have to keep our wide players open wide and keep them. Meaning we're going to take a risk because there will be times we will not want them to come back and support. But let's not forget something, which is still the little concern that I have, and maybe Yoni can address this because it actually gave me joy today when he described it. They forced City at the same time to come back into the middle. I agree with you that they didn't have the natural wingers. You know, they've lost Mahrez, they've lost all these guys that are Sterling, Mahrez, and all those guys that used to stay wide. Grealish wasn't playing, Doku wasn't playing. So Doku didn't have to do any defensive work. Doku just had to worry about attacking because he had Konsa behind him. Now, is he going to stick with Konsa or is he going to bring in Matikash to play against us? Definitely, Lukadini is going to play. So Saka is going to have to find a way, whether to face him one-on-one or when it becomes to join back, give it back to Odegaard. But I think they will respect us a little bit because of our wide players and stay back. Now, go back to Tottenham, even though they won at Spurs. Remember that Tottenham should have killed that game in the first half. Tottenham played overhead balls a lot and they got into their behind several times, but they didn't convert their chances. In this case, if we played like that and convert our chances earlier, we will kill the game at the very beginning. Then also go back to the game against Bournemouth that they played, that they had a draw 2-2. Semenyo, which is why I said Johnny actually spotted and said everything, and I agree with him completely. Semenyo was the guy that drove them back. Semenyo gave them problem that first half, and he actually was credited with a goal. So I think the joy for us is Martinelli fit, Saka fit, attack them on the wings, push them back, force Bailey to do some defensive work. Now, if they then force us to come back to the midfield, and I think that's where the challenge is. I don't know if Kai Havertz starts, if he's physical enough to play that game. Meaning we have to let Jesus play the way he played against Luton. Let Jesus come back and let Havertz stay. So, because go and watch that Luton game, we actually use Havertz as a decoy a lot. Jesus came back a lot of time and left Havertz behind him. So Havertz was the one way up front. And we had so many chances because Havertz was able to then drive the ball. So Odegaard and Jesus come back. So if they actually try to give us too much work, too much pressure in the midfield, we might have to rely on Odegaard and Jesus coming back a lot to assist and pick the ball. Stones tried to do it. It was falling down. I don't know if you guys counted how many times Stones fell down trying to hold the ball. And Akoji didn't understand how to play midfield. It was too close to Stones at many times. It was too close to him. So they couldn't even...
He's a center back.
Yeah, Stones was just falling down. That is something that Rodri would never do. So I think if you could play with confidence, if we could play against the crowd, because I saw the 12th man for Villa, and that was really, really worrisome. That noise in that stadium was too much. So we have to be able to combat the 12th man that Villa had, play with confidence, let our players stay wide, meaning we're going to rely on our fullbacks to do a lot of defense, get the ball, spray it out, push them back, get 1 or 2 goals. Then that way their energy will come down and they will understand that, no, this is not our level. We need to just stay back and play. I'm still worried because they're a very good team and I respect them and we are playing at home. But I think we're going to have to match their energy and give a very good result. I don't know if DJ Roy is back, but that's my analysis.
I think he stepped away. So, Yoni, I'll just take some final thoughts from you on this Aston Villa game. So, if I'm summarizing, right, it sounds like from everything we're saying, right, it looks like Villa were able to get the upper hand. A lot of that reason was maybe because City didn't have the right personnel, but also Villa were able to effectively use the wings and overload City in the middle because they didn't have a solid midfield. That said, right, I think from what I'm getting from you, it seems like we're confident that as long as Saka and Martinelli are fit, right, and Biodo is talking about Jesus and Havertz interchanging, Arsenal will get some joy against Villa. Where is the weakness for Arsenal? Is there a chance this Villa team, because as we've said, they're one of the best teams in the league. If you look at their points, if you look at where they are in the table this season, they're one of the best teams. Mm-hmm. So how can they hurt Arsenal?
So interestingly, I think is similar in nature, in that ball over the top is where they can actually cause some damage. If you go back to last year, where we beat them 4-2, you remember the ball over the top over and over again towards Watkins. And Watkins is very good, by the way, with playing back to goal. I mean, he's actually a very complete striker. I mean, he plays very well with back to goal, and he's very technical once he has the ball down on his feet. He's very technical. And I remember, and I don't think I've ever seen since that time, I think he's the only one that I've seen take on Saliba one-on-one and actually beat him. And he did beat Saliba one-on-one and scored that goal. I still remember that. So ball over the top towards Watkins, they can succeed because we also play with a higher line. Now, usually a lot of people will start talking about, and I know most Arsenal fans are always nervous about Zinni defensively. And when you saw Villa, the first thing that most Arsenal fans were saying was like, can you imagine Bailey or Diaby one-on-one against Zinni? Honestly speaking, just my assessment this season and then towards the end of last season, at least when he was healthy, one-on-one, actually, he's not that bad. 1v1, he's been, especially this season, he's been solid. Where his problem is actually that you can call it arrogance or nonchalance that he has sometimes with the ball on his feet around defensive area where he just loses it in just very, very bad positions.
Was it Everton last season where he lost it really high up?
Well, but with nobody behind him, and then they just went. Yeah. So he has a tendency to lose the ball in very bad positions, and
losing this weekend as well.
Yes, yeah. This, I mean, against Luton, that was the goal they scored, right? So, if he's switched on, someone like him, and is not careless with the ball, I don't see that. I don't see him as a weakness, and I'll be fine with him playing in this game. If we had Tommy, would have been even better, but he's not there, so I would be fine with Zinni. But yeah, the danger I anticipate from Villa is they're going to press. They're very good at pressing, and if they get the ball before we have adjusted our defensive line, that ball over the top to Watkins, I think that's the threat as far as Villa is concerned.
Nice. Dijeroy, I'll just give you a quick chance. Thoughts on the Villa Arsenal game? How do you see this one going? Villa's at home, but they're coming off the back of this win against City that everyone is talking about.
Well, I mean, I think Arsenal has a chance to win. I mean, I haven't really watched much Villa games this year, but I think, I mean, Bukayo Saka always find a way to to make things happen back there, man. I don't know unless Emery takes him out of the game, but he can't take him out for the whole 90 minutes. So I'm looking at Arsenal, to win that game and basically, make a statement by winning that game.
I like how you think. I like
so
how
I got
you
to
think. So Saka for the win. I like it.
I think one game that we may all agree on that Arsenal is going to win.
What did you say, Charles?
Okay. I think this is one game that we may all agree on.
I know I always say stop your feelings. So I am not going to reveal everything, but this is also one of the games that Arsenal has to be very, very cautious. And I'm just adding to what Yoni said. Losing that game will be Arsenal's fault in terms of those silly mistakes. Zinni, I agree with you, one-on-one is good. He creates his own problem. He does it like he basically some arrogance sometimes. Kicks the ball and tries to invite a player so that way he can make Martinelli one-on-one with the player. That's what he tries to do, and that creates problem. So I think if we are disciplined from the beginning to the end of the game and we don't create loose balls, I think we might have a chance. But do not expect that game will be easy. I keep saying it. That game will never be easy.
Definitely.
You will have to fight for that 3 points if you want it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Will make it
let's move on to the Spurs Newcastle game. So interestingly, both teams lost their games against opposition that we maybe would have expected them to win. Spurs lost to West Ham. West Ham is never an easy team, But with the way Spurs are playing at the moment, with Romero back, I think we might have said, okay, with Angie Ball, they should have been able to find a way past West Ham. But they ended up losing that game 2-1. Newcastle totally got eviscerated by Everton with a 3-0 loss. Trippier there with a couple of mistakes. I don't know if you all caught that, but they struggled, especially after all the credit we gave them, with what they did when through the injury crisis that they've been, the results that they got during that period, and then they essentially capitulated today. It's almost like Sean Dyche is saying, all right, fine. This wasn't hard enough. I'm used to relegation battles. Take 10 points off so I can, have the real challenge I'm used to. So how do you guys see this coming? Newcastle against Spurs. Charles, I'll take thoughts from you on this one, starting out.
Yeah, thank you. Newcastle against Spurs. So I watched the Spurs game. I didn't watch the Newcastle game. But because I watched the Spurs game and I saw what happened, I kind of want to give a upper hand to Spurs. One, Newcastle has injuries like you already mentioned. 2, 3-0 is not a small scoreline. That's a big deal. So even if I didn't watch the game, to concede 3 goals, it says something. So maybe their injuries are finally catching up to them. Yeah, they dealt with Chelsea, dealt with Manchester United, almost dealt with PSG, even with all injuries. Now, the Spurs game I watched, honestly, Spurs didn't play bad. They actually did not play bad. They just made some silly mistakes. The 2 goals, for those who did not watch it, just go watch the highlights. The 2 goals were like primary school mistakes from the defense. They were things that you could never even think could happen. Literally kicking the ball on the body of the wrong man, it bounces back to the opponent and the opponent kicks it in. It was just ridiculous things happening. So Spurs literally had that game. They had control of that game. They won the first half 1-0. They could have even scored more goals. They had control of that game till the calamity started. They started making mistakes. So if they can stay in control against Newcastle, which I'm not saying is going to be easy, but West Ham isn't easy either. If they shot themselves in the foot against West Ham, if they do not do that against Newcastle, they may be able to beat Newcastle. Also because Spurs, with Son in form, Kulusevski, and they kind of find a way to still put pressure on their opponents. So eventually maybe goals will come. And like you mentioned, Romero is back, so they should be more solid at the back, although what we saw today was really, really abnormal. Newcastle, on the other hand, they considered 3 goals against Everton. And like I said, I didn't watch the game, so I can't really judge. But from that result, maybe the injuries are catching up with them. And if they drag in that same form they used today into the next game, I think Spurs can punish them. So I'll give this game to Spurs.
Okay. Biodun, are you seeing that same analysis? Because so we talked about injuries, but if you look at their lineup today, it's their usual lineup that they've been playing with through this injury crisis. Fabian Schär, Lascelles, Trippier, Livramento, who's come in and done a really good job. The young boy, Louis Smiley, Guimaraes is available, Joelinton is there. Anthony Gordon, who's having, a fantastic time down that left. Isak, we've been impressed with what he's been doing since he came to the Premier League, and Almiron. So even though they have injuries, it's the same team that have gotten those results. Now, maybe fatigue is starting to catch up to those players because at the moment, it's busy December period. They're playing every 3 games. That their Champions League game, wasn't easy as well, and they're having to deal with that. Biodun, do you think this is a game where, they continue to suffer from, the fatigue and injuries catching up, or is there some hope for them against Spurs?
I think they will suffer again. You're right in the fatigue. No. I'm again, it's a way for them. Check Newcastle's results away. It's not been great, right? So, and go and look at Newcastle home games. I mean, they lost to Liverpool at home, I know that. But watch the other games. There's a way Newcastle gets results. Newcastle gets results with their fans. There is an energy that that crowd generates that keep pushing them, right? And it's hard for them to play week in, week out with the way they play. So to your point, yes, fatigue, right? Also remember that this weekend, there's Champions League game next week. So I don't know how much energy they want to soak in this Spurs game to go and see if they can still make round of 16 next week. I know you and I have talked about it in the previous recording when we talked about, how would they survive? Who was that again? Playing. They had the league game that they play PSG. What was the
Yeah,
game?
they played Chelsea, I think, before, and then they played
Chelsea.
PSG a
Yeah,
few
they played
days
Chelsea
later.
and they played PSG. So you and I talked about that. I get that, but this December is fully packed. There is a Champions League game. Even Arsenal, Aston Villa, Arsenal has to think about. We've qualified, so that might help us to say, okay, maybe we're going to play this game very well, then use our reserve team against PSV. But I don't know if Ateta also wants to lose, like, too many goals against PSV, which I don't want to. So Eddie Howe has to manage that team with the injury, plus Nick Pope has joined the injury list, right? So Nick Pope has joined the injury list, going to have a shoulder surgery, and is going to be out for 4 months. So now it's not getting better. So that fatigue out of today's game, play again this weekend, then have to worry about qualifying for Champions League is already a challenge mentally for them. And the way they play very well. They use all their energy and strength when they play at home. This one, they are going to Spurs. Spurs, I'll tell you the mistakes with Spurs, which Charles was describing. Angie told them like they should play and enjoy, meaning they will play this style until they perfect it. So expect to see mistakes when a team is trying to play, from the back, passes and all that, because it wants them to master it and get it to that level. So they will not change their game. That's Angie for you. Sports will not change.
Yeah.
That mistake by Bizuma that cost 3-2 against City, and they were lucky to equalize, they will still make that mistake again because that is how their manager wants them to play. So playing from the back and playing and building and holding and having possession, that's how he wants them to play. So expect that to continue. So there might be opportunity for Newcastle to lash on and score them. But I do not expect Newcastle to go to Spurs and play with that strength when they have a Champions League that they don't know if they will make round of 16. So that's my challenge with them, because they also don't want to lose players. There is nobody that is coming back before Tuesday or Wednesday. So that's a challenge that I see.
Yoni, can you give us some insight into Angie Ball? So everybody's been talking about Angie Ball. It's very attacking. But can you give us maybe some components of what you've seen and how that might maybe affect Newcastle? Is there a chance Newcastle get overwhelmed? Because I think a huge feature of Angie Ball is overwhelming the defense, right? They push players up a lot. Tell us some things you've seen from Angie Ball and how that might play out in this Newcastle game.
So, so I do admire, like most people have described it, as brave, the way they play it is as fun to watch. But at times I find it to be a little too naive in some games. And I haven't yet seen a tactical tweak to what they do. I have seen personnel changes, like in the City game, for example, and that's fine, and it worked out in that game. But I haven't seen an actual tactical overhaul during the game, or adjusting to a completely different tactics from game to game depending on the opponent. I haven't seen that. It's just it's the same tactic, and it's fun to watch, but there are times where it just looks like, against a team that can go behind the line, they would be very susceptible. I mean, honestly speaking, the game against City, that first half, they rode their luck, right? So as much as I admire the fact that they managed to score 3 goals on City, they could have easily been 4-5-0 down in that first half, or 1. So it comes with, it's a high risk kind of approach that they play with. But they press, they try to suffocate you with high press. Their defensive line usually sits right up on the halfway line almost, even when they have 9 players, it seems. Right. So they play with a very, very high line, and then they press in numbers. And the moment they get the ball, they also attack in numbers. So every time they have the ball around the final third, there's usually 4, 5, 6 players in and around the box. And that's how they generate all those clear chances. The problem I have with their tactic, again, going back to how I think it's a bit naive sometimes, is uh, if you can break through the press, they're
Mm-hmm.
they're wide open. And if they don't have the right personnel, especially defensively, then it's difficult for them to recover. So when they didn't have
Right.
both Romero and Van de Ven in the lineup, the other defenders they have weren't quick enough to recover, which is probably why he started playing with two fullbacks as center backs just to
Mm.
make up for that
To
speed,
catch up the space and the
to,
pace.
to make up for the speed that he needs to continue to play the kind of style that they play. Now,
Interesting.
going into this game, I actually think Newcastle have a very good chance in this game. And here's why I say that. So I was not surprised Newcastle lost to Everton. I'm surprised by the fact that
The
they
3-0 scoreline. Yeah.
the scoreline, but I was not surprised because Everton, very solid, very physical team. They can match up the physicality of Newcastle, especially at home. They have been strong the whole season.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised by that. And Newcastle usually thrive against teams that actually come at them because then they can hit you with the likes of Gordon, Almiron. Isak is also very fast. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I expect in this game. I don't expect Spurs to change their tactics, but I
Mm-hmm.
think
With
Newcastle
that front three.
weapons up front and enough good enough midfielders that can actually hold onto the ball against the press and be able to spring an attack. So
Okay.
I expect Newcastle to be very dangerous in that game. This game feels like the kind of game they would want to. It suits their style, is what I feel.
Okay.
Now, can they lose the game too with Spurs? Absolutely, because Spurs are good enough and they will generate a lot of chances like they always do.
Yeah.
And if they manage to convert them, then it's a wrap. But I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as people might think.
Okay. DJ Roy, I'll just quick from you. Results and why?
I think is James Madison
He's still
available?
out. James Madison is out. I don't think Van de
He's
Ven is
still out.
back either.
And Devon is
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Newcastle 2-1.
Okay.
That's gonna be my just like Yoni said, Newcastle's gonna hit them with those high line that they play with, and of course Isak, we know how speedy he
Mm-hmm.
is. So with James Madison out, Spurs has been suffering since he's been out. So I think they will not be able to retain the ball in that mid and control the mid, and Newcastle's just gonna overpower them with Almiron and their flank and their wingers.
Interesting. Okay.
So 2-1.
2-1, 2-1, Newcastle. Charles, results.
I'm actually doing the same prediction, 2-1, but I'm flipping it. I'm giving it to Spurs. Yeah,
Okay.
like DJ Roy said, Madison has been out and Newcastle, Spurs have been suffering since then. But the game I watched today with Spurs, I actually think Spurs they're getting back to the form they had before Madison got injured. They just need to, like Yoni said, get accustomed to playing, or Bjorn said actually, get accustomed to playing from the back, get accustomed to playing what the coach wants them to play, and avoid those mistakes at the back. So I'm saying 2-1 for Spurs because I know that the Palace is going to make a mistake and Newcastle is going to capitalize on it. But I think Spurs has enough firepower up front to deliver 2 goals. And Newcastle is solid, but like we've been saying, they are not. After what happened today, and of course, they've not really been in the best form. They have a lot of fixtures, they have a lot going on. I think Spurs can take this. So 2-1 Spurs.
Okay. Interestingly enough, I'm gonna go 3-1 or maybe even 3-2 Newcastle. And I say that because I think, as Yoni pointed out, they're still missing Van de Ven. I think for me, Van de Ven has probably been, along with Vicario, really has been a revelation for Spurs this season. It shocked me how, for such a big man, how quick he was.
Mm-hmm.
And as Yoni pointed out, a feature of Angie Ball is in having fast central defenders that are able to recover that space from pushing up so high on. And Van de Ven played a lot as a cover, which even allowed Romero to be the one in possession and playing, a bit higher up so that Van der Ven could drop and recover those balls. So I think with those, they're still going to be leaking goals, especially against Newcastle. Almiron, Gordon, Isak, those three running at you with that much spacing behind, there's going to be trouble, especially if Andrew refuses to adjust.
Yeah.
Bjorn, scores.
I go with a Spurs win, 2-1, like Charles. I'm gonna go with Charles.
Okay.
I like Angie Ball, but one thing that I think is gonna happen, and I think sports fans should just accept, is if they can just set their mind that they're not gonna win anything. That's the way they can not worry. Because what the guy is trying to do, you will lose games because of certain mistakes due to the naivety that Yoni mentioned. At this stage, what he's trying to build is building it without caution. So there's a bit of naivety in what he's trying to build. He wants to
Yeah.
get the guys playing with confidence and attacking regardless of who the person. And I've seen the man, I think he's a very stubborn man. So it will not change his style. I mean, somebody went to City and played like that. There is nothing else that will convince me that guy is going to listen to anybody. He's going to do what he wants to do, and he's going to continue to play like that. And that will result into some silly mistakes. Meaning there are games whereby you have to change and play tactically, like Yanni said. It will not.
Yeah.
It will play the same way. I expect him to do the same thing, regardless of the personnel. Whether Van der Ven is available, he's going to play with whatever personnel he has because he wants to build that culture, he wants to build that confidence, and he wants them to attack. Surprisingly, Madison has been out, which is key, but I have seen guys that have stepped up on that. Celso has really, really been interesting. Kulusevski, that guy has been adding effort. Bernard Johnson is selfish, but he's been delivering. There are many times that I watch him that was supposed to make passes because of his instinct as a striker. He doesn't pass and make the right passes at the right time. So I've seen guys that can step up to fill that void. The worst, they will bring Son back into midfield and play Richarlison up front. So there's a way you can tweak things in. I still just don't believe that Newcastle will have the same energy that they played Manchester United, played Everton with the same energy and they lost, and go back and still do that in weekend. It's just not possible unless those guys are on drugs, and we need to find out.
Yanni scores prediction for this game.
I'm with you, Ayo, on this one. I think it's going. My prediction is 3-2 Newcastle.
Okay. Cool. All right.
2-2 for Spurs.
Yeah. So it looks like Newcastle has it at this from the balance of it in this group. All right. Looking forward to those games. The games are coming thick and fast now, and you guys keep listening in. We're gonna be here through all the games. It's busy December. It's a period that we all love. It's busy and maybe tough on the players, but just entertainment at home. So stay tuned, guys, and catch you again next week. Thank you.